Wow, everyone braced for the craziest plot twist. That day, Olin found Jack again, suspecting trouble since his big black dog vanished mysteriously. They had a disagreement that escalated from a war of words to a full-on brawl until Robert showed up and stopped this soap opera. Finally, Laurie gave Jack a daughter, and Jack carefully cradled her. They named the daughter Rachel, and time flew by like a shooting star. Jack's farm was flourishing, and the villagers were all grinning from ear to ear. Some elderly villagers tried some too, thinking the tobacco would sell well. The excitement was like New Year's. But at that moment, 2 federal police arrived for Jack. The authorities intended to arrest Jack on suspicion of murder, yet Jack was completely unaware of it. Numerous villagers voluntarily showed up to bid him farewell, refusing to believe that such a kind-hearted person could possibly be a murderer. Villagers chatted on the street. Soon all entered the federal courthouse. Joseph and his family attended this court event, but the murder occurred before Jack enlisted. Back then, Jack had a conflict at the casino, stormed out, and started a fight. Angry Jack pulled a gun. Yes, you heard that right, and ended things himself, and the drama unfolded from there. If the case just got brushed aside, Jack could be in big trouble. Meanwhile, Laurie sat in court, worried and reluctant to leave. Jack's fate was unknown. Laurie saw it as a dilemma, but the twist lay with one man. He and Jack's daughter ended up in a big conflict in Jack's home. Talk about an upgraded family reunion. The outcome of this grand conflict made Jack's home quite the lively spot. Sounds like a family reunion is in order. In this chaotic scenario, Laurie felt anxious and was still unwilling to leave. Just then, Olin sneaked up behind Laurie. If Laurie wants to save Jack, she'd better get him to see his true identity, but Olin's methods had their own agenda. So that day, Laurie headed to the holding room, wanting to convince Jack to see the truth. To get Jack to acknowledge his identity, Laurie presented evidence during the second trial, feeling like a detective. She firmly believed Jack wasn't her husband who disappeared 7 years ago, and that statement made the courtroom go whoa. Subtitles then. She offered additional detailed information, including the fact that a big black dog was killed at home. But these minor pieces of evidence were completely unable to convince the judge and the plaintiff's lawyer. During his time with Jack, Robert had already viewed him as a father. Next, Jack's defense attorney brought in a new witness. This witness was no ordinary person. He had 2,000 acres in Clark County and said Jack's real name was Townsend. His story mentioned that Jack was once a teacher who scammed the whole town. Jack couldn't sit still upon hearing this. Jack nervously glanced at Laurie, but she deliberately avoided his gaze. Talk about a danger signal. To prove his innocence, Jack stood up and fired his own defense lawyer, ready for a showdown. He accused Faison of being the guy who kidnapped him and even pretending to be a guy in white, and this dude actually argued with the judge. The judge was extremely furious and gave Faison a severe scolding. But this guy was as stubborn as an ox, refusing to listen at all. Thankfully, the jury dismissed his previous testimony, giving Jack a chance to turn the tables. But the judge hoped he could find more witnesses. The villagers eagerly raised their hands to vouch for Jack. Even Robert stood up, but Laurie stayed put, not wanting Jack to be sentenced to death. After all, Jack brought out the land transfer agreement, hinting at some serious trust issues. Yet even so, Laurie still didn't want Jack to lose his life and even promised Olin that if Jack came out safe, things would go back to normal. This situation made it extremely difficult for Jack to accept. He simply could not come to terms with such an outcome. Ultimately, Laurie was persuaded by the obstinate Jack into admitting that he was indeed her husband. Hearing this, Olin finally seemed to grasp Laurie's chase. On execution day, Jack found out the villagers got a good price for their tobacco. In prison, he excitedly hugged his wife to celebrate. But when asked about the kids, Laurie looked slightly disappointed, with real doubts. Jack's feelings of helplessness and doubt continued. It turned out Faison's words in court were true. Jack was once the town's infamous Townsend, and he truly despised that version of himself. Fortunately, he met someone just like him. They spent 4 years in prison together, seemingly knowing everything about each other, but no one expected Jack to snap at the casino. Ultimately, Jack felt deep helplessness. this was beyond his control now. Jack realized his predicament, and the noose was tightening. The situation was spiraling into an endless cycle, and he had to face the music. You've got to tell your enemies. They will understand, he thought to himself. No, don't. If you'll support me, do it. He was confused. Today and every day is the same. If you love me, you've got to speak your love. Be a good father, and you'll grow old together. That's family ties. Jack fantasized about growing old with Laurie. Though Jack longed to spend his life with Laurie, he loathed the mistakes of his past. His identity gave him a shot at redemption. Every night, Jack silently gazed at his wife, grateful for their love, finally understanding each other's deep feelings. With tears in his eyes, he locked eyes with Jack, and just then 2 police officers arrived as Jack was being led to execution. Laurie lovingly dressed Jack in the clothes she had sewn 7 years ago, leaving behind a precious memory. Villagers gathered at the execution site to send Jack off, but Laurie was nowhere to be seen, as if everything had faded with time. At the gallows, Jack trembled, seeking his beloved, but saw only cold onlookers. At the last moment, Laurie hurried to the scene, sharing a knowing smile for one final goodbye. Under their gaze, Jack died. The villagers built a church in his honor, making him their legend.